You know, some legends are just born, but others, they're forged. Forged in failure, in tragedy, and ultimately in defiance. So today, we're going to dive into the story of a man who had to be completely broken down before he could ever be rebuilt as a hero. And that's really the big question we're tackling here, right? It's this incredible journey from the absolute height of privilege down to the lowest depths of despair, and then somehow out the other side into legend. And believe it or not, this story doesn't start on the high seas. Nope. It all kicks off in the gilded halls of high society.
Yeah, to really get the hero, you've got to meet the brat he was first.
So, let's set the scene. We're in Villa Pesca. It's this super wealthy coastal town, part of the massive Gambrian Empire. And you gotta understand, this is a place where power, money, influence, that's everything. And for the guy we're talking about, well, this was his entire world.
So, meet Sander Zura. This kid was born with a silver spoon practically welded to his mouth. I mean, his dad was a rich fleet owner who got into politics, and his mom was completely obsessed with social status. The message he got day in and day out was, you are better than everyone else. And for a long, long time, he believed it. He absolutely believed it.
You know, every character like this needs someone to keep them grounded. And for Sander, that person was Trent. Now, Trent came from the complete opposite background. Poor, but just incredibly empathetic and loyal. To Sander, Trent was kind of like a charity case, you know? Someone he could be generous to make himself look good. But Trent, he knew the real story. He knew that the arrogant Sander needed his friendship way, way more than he ever needed Sander's money.
Well, as you can imagine, a worldview that's built entirely on privilege, it's like a house of cards. And Sanders was about to come tumbling down. Hard. Sander ends up following Trent to the super prestigious Zerona Naval Academy, probably thinking, hey, another playground for me to own. Oh, he could not have been more wrong. Because for the very first time in his life, his fancy family name meant next to nothing. And the breakdown wasn't just small, it was total. Back home, he was a fencing prodigy. Here, he was just okay. Back home, school was a breeze. At the academy, he was actually failing. And his classmates, who couldn't care less where he came from, they saw him for exactly what he was, an arrogant, spoiled brat. And the real kicker? His buddy Trent was thriving. He became this popular champion ring fighter. Sander's whole world was flipping upside down. Okay, so this is where the story takes a really dark turn. I mean, a bruised ego is one thing, but what happens next? This isn't just a harsh lesson. This is the complete and utter demolition of his entire world. Just look at this chain of events. It is absolutely brutal. So first, in a fit of pure jealousy over Trent's girlfriend, Lupa, Sander uses his family's influence to get them assigned to different ships. A few weeks later, he gets word. Trent's ship sank. All hands lost. The guilt, it's immediate and it's crushing. As if that's not enough, he then learns his own father was murdered over some stupid petty feud about an old shrimp boat. And just when you think it can't possibly get any worse, he bumps into Lupa, Trent's grieving girlfriend, and she just looks at him and says, "Why couldn't it have been you instead?" That's it. That's the final nail in the coffin. It's the one thing he's already screaming at himself in his own head. You know, when you hit rock bottom like that, there's really only one way to go. And in that moment of absolute despair, Sander makes a choice. He makes a vow. No more petty grudges like his dad. No more selfish, arrogant actions that destroy the people around him. He decides he's going to honor his friend Trent by trying to become the kind of man Trent always was. So, with this new purpose, this new vow, Sander goes back to the war between his empire, Gambria, and the rivals, Alres. He's a completely changed man now, and he's looking for a new path. And he finds it. He is assigned to the warship Sunburner, and there he meets Captain Huesos. And Huesos is basically the man Sander wants to become. He's got these deep principles. He's totally devoted to his crew, and he is not afraid to call out the corruption of his own emperor. Huesos sees something in this new humbled Sander, and he takes him under his wing. It's under Huesos that Sander learns about the Empire's darkest, dirtiest secret, a thing called the Trail of Lament. And listen, this wasn't just a death sentence, this was state-sponsored torture on a horrifying scale. Basically,
prisoners were forced to go into the toxic, diseased ruins of a place called Loria, a place that literally killed anyone who set foot in it. And their job? Harvest these magical lore stones for the Emperor while they slowly, agonizingly died. It was a death sentence disguised as a work assignment.
Captain Weisson's opinion on this was crystal clear. He'd seen it firsthand. He knew it was just pure evil, plain and simple. And hearing that absolute moral clarity, it had a huge impact on Sander. And it was setting the stage for the ultimate test of his newfound principles.
So the war finally ends. And sadly, Captain Weisos passes away. And right then, Sander's moment of truth, the one he's been building towards this whole time, it arrives.
And the irony here, it is just unbelievable, isn't it? He gets offered his own command, the captaincy of the Sunburner, his mentor's ship. But there's a catch. Of course there's a catch. His very first mission? To do the one thing Captain Weisos hated more than anything, escort a new batch of prisoners to the Trail of Lament. To the Empire, it was probably just a routine loyalty test. But for Sander, this was everything. This was the crossroads.
And he accepted the mission.
Then he gathered his crew. He made sure they were all men who had served under Weisos, men who he knew shared those same principles.
And then, once they were out on the open sea, prisoners down in the hold, miles from any shore, he made his choice. He gets the whole crew together and he just lays it all out on the line. He tells them, I will not be a part of this cruelty. He was declaring the prisoners free, renouncing the Empire, and turning his back on his old life forever. And then he gave the crew a choice. You can mutiny against me right now, or you can join me. Join me in a new life as pirates, fighting for something that actually matters. And you know what? Every single crewman stood with him.
Can you imagine being one of those prisoners? One minute you're heading for certain agonizing death, and the next, this captain tells you you're free? They didn't see a mutineer, they saw a hero. And right there on the deck of that ship, they gave him a new name.
The arrogant, privileged Sander Zura was gone. In his place, Sander Trailbreaker was born, a name he didn't inherit, but one he earned through one single, incredible act of defiance.
So he broke the Trail of Lament, but what he really did was set himself on a collision course with the entire Empire. And that leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? A hero is born, but what happens when a pirate who tore everything down has to start building a kingdom of his own?